It's good day to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Millsy, back with Hometown Commander, back for another episode of Millsy Brews, the show where I brew version 1.0 decklist to the commander in front of us in my quest to brew the magic world. You know the motto, baby, it's ABB, always be brewing, and that's what we're back to do today. The deck list is going to be down in the description for you below, as well as I'd really appreciate it if you could do all that YouTube stuff, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. But to finish out Teamer Week, I thought it was only right to cover the new dragon on the block. We lost the old of Tarkir. Atarka and her brood is gone. And in her place, with Eshki at the helm, we see Eshki being paired up with the Spirit Dragon Ureni and this house of a card in Ureni of the Unwritten. A 7-mana 7/7 Spirit Dragon with flying and trample, aka Flample. And whenever Ureni enters or attacks, we look at the top 8 cards of our library. We can put a dragon among them on the battlefield and put the rest of the bottom in any order. I'll tell you, I didn't have cheating in dragons off the top of your deck in my bingo card for Tarkir Dragonstorm, but man, does Ureni not only work great as its own commander, but go really well in some other dragon decks, especially the 5-color dragon decks we'll talk about later in our set release stuff. But Ureni, I think there's a lot of ways you could approach it. Obviously, dragons. We want to play dragons. We want to cheat dragons in. You really, I think, have 2 ways to game Ureni's abilities. You can get multiple enters or multiple attacks, right? Think about it either way. I think in their colors, we have great ways to do both. I've chose to go a little bit towards the blink side of things because it's just a little bit cheaper to blink Ureni. We can blink Ureni any time to get the dragon, which is really nice. Meaning that if we look at either blinking Ureni on our end step or during one of our opponent's turns, we have that dragon for our next turn, right? Getting around some of maybe the hasty things we could need. But we can also care a lot about dragons entering the battlefield, as they're going to be entering the battlefield off of Ureni. And then we have great ways in our colors to give our creatures haste. So whenever they do enter, they're going to have haste. Of course, the turn Ureni comes in, right, we can give that dragon haste, and Ureni and that dragon will both be able to attack. But of course, when Ureni attacks, right, that dragon coming in can't attack, obviously, because we've already got past that point. But I think it just presents a lot of interesting ways to take advantage of Ureni and build a very different teamer deck than something like Miram, which is very popular at the moment. I want to say a quick thank you to all the channel members. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. If you're interested in seeing all of our videos just a little bit early, check out the link down below. But there's so many great dragons to choose from. There's so many fun ones. And I think we also want to try, when we can, to target dragons that affect our board state, especially the ones that are coming in on attack. Sarkhan Fireblood is just a great planeswalker. 2 great +1s, either discarding a card and then drawing a card, or adding 2 mana of any colors to cast dragons. Again, great way to ramp us up, as all of our dragons are big in big mana, including, right, Ureni at 7. Of course, Tarkir Worldrender, the classic 7 mana. Whenever a dragon you control attacks, it gets double strike. Good way to start hitting us, get us to hit even harder in combat. We're also trying out Blast Furnace Talkite. This is from a commander said, but it gives all creatures attacking our opponent's double strike. This is actually going to give double strike to our opponent's creatures attacking each other as well. But hey, this isn't a bad one to cheat in during combat, just immediately giving all of our creatures double strike and hitting even harder. Broodcaller Scourge says whenever one or more dragons deal combat damage to a player, we could put a permanent from our hand with mana value less than or equal to that damage onto the battlefield. A great way to cheat in some key enchantments or other dragons, just to get our battlefield larger and larger and more for our opponents to deal with. Gainax gives us a treasure whenever it or another dragon comes in. This is a nice way to profit from those dragons coming in off Ureni, just netting us some treasures and netting us some mana. Lathlas is going to give us a 5/5 dragon whenever a non-token dragon comes in. So, right, now that means we're getting extra dragon tokens every time. They could be back to block. And then it has this nice fire-breathing ability to buff all of our dragons in combat if we need just that little bit of extra mana, or a little bit extra damage. Meringue River Region is one of the new Omen dragons from Tarkir Dragonstorm, and this is one of those dragons I really think is going to end up being better than we think it is right now. A 6-mana 6/7 that bounce up to 2 non-land permanents back to the owner's hands. Note that this doesn't specify it has to be our opponent's permanents. We can bounce our own things back to our hand, which could be helpful if we have a dragon that has a really great ETB or we want to get it down again. And if we see Meringue a little too early or we don't want it, we can pay 4 mana to draw 3 and pitch a card and shuffle it back into our library for a future time. I don't think we have any reason not to play Miram in this deck. I mean, Miram is a great dragon in its own right, and obviously with it also being Teamer, this is one of our places to play it. Whenever another non-token dragon comes in, create a token that's a copy of it, except that token isn't legendary. If there's any world where we get this down right before Ureni, we get to have 2 copies of Ureni, which is pretty cool. But again, even just doubling up Ureni's ETB is great to cheat dragons. We're trying that new Storm Scale Scion. It has Storm, so when we cast it, we can copy it for each spell cast before it this turn, and the copy become tokens, and it just buffs all of our other dragons by +1/+1. Thundermane Dragon is one of the new dragons that's in the precon that Ureni comes in. We can look at the top card of our library at any time, and we can cast creatures with power 4 or greater from the top of our library, which is most of our dragons. And if we do, it gets haste until end of turn. A great ability, and Thundermane isn't bad for its cost as a 4-mana 4/4. Twin Flame Tyrant's just going to help us hit harder. If a source we control would deal damage to an opponent or permanent opponent controls, it's going to deal double that damage instead, making sure all of our dragons hit harder. And it really works with things like Atarka, because your first and regular strikes, right, deal double damage, just making sure you get a lot of it through. Uvar Hellkite makes a 6/6 dragon token whenever one of our dragons attack, again, just filling up our boards with more dragons and just keeping us stocked up with ways to block our opponents and hurt them when our dragons come in, like we'll talk about in a second. But like I said, I think Blink is a very easy way to take Ureni to the next level. Not because we can get more cheat-ins, but think about it. I think Ureni is going to be a pretty obvious removal target from our opponents, considering every time it attacks, it's cheating us in a dragon. It's also not a bad dragon at a 7-mana 7/7, right? What I like about Blink abilities specifically is anytime anyone tries to target Ureni with an ability, blinking Ureni will stop it from being able to be, targeted from that thing, effectively fizzling that ability, and gets us that ETB again. There's a lot of ways to look at this. You have things like Essence Flux and Blur that both blink a single target. Blur draws us a card, whereas Essence Flux doesn't. But we have things like Displace and Ghostly Flicker that actually allow us to exile 2 creatures, up to 2 if we want to. This is really fun because if we have another dragon that has a nice ability when it comes in, we can blink it and Ureni, right? Getting those abilities. And then Planar Decision, just another one creature blink, but it comes in with a counter on it. And then, probably the style of card for blink we want the most is something like Conjurer's Closet. Just beginning of our end step, we can blink a creature we control every turn. Just blinking Ureni every turn, getting a dragon on each of our turns as we propel ourselves forward. But I think where our deck can really take Ureni's cheating in dragons to the next level is through a couple key abilities. Obviously, we have things like Panharmonicon, doubling Ureni's ability when it comes in, but it'll also double a lot of other abilities, especially some key and really popular abilities in Scourge of Valkis and then Dragon Tempest on the next slide. This ability says whenever another dragon comes in, it deals X to any target where X is the number of dragons you control. Well, more dragons come in means more opportunities to deal damage out, and if you can double these abilities with something like Panharmonicon, you're just starting to deal out a ton of damage. You can also use something like Terror of the Peaks, which deals damage to a player, to any target equal to the power of a creature that came in. Again, big dragons getting cheated in equals big damage, and any target means you can take out a pesky creature or just hit somebody in the face as our dragons, go to attack them as well. Dragon Tempest, though, is a little better of Scourge of Valkis because it gives all of our flying creatures haste when they come in, making them, again, really powerful when they come in and allowing them to attack right away as well as packing out of that damage. And then we could play the new Dragon Storms from the new set. They each have an ability when they come in, and then whenever a dragon comes in, we get to bring it back to our hand. Encroaching Dragonstorm gives us some ramp. Breaching Dragonstorms lets us potentially cheat in a thing 8 or less from the top of our library, which is pretty cool. Both of them are great abilities, and getting them multiple times could lead to some really great abilities. Playing this for 5 mana and getting a 7 or 8 mana dragon is a real savings, right? And then being able to bounce this back and use it again is really helpful. Then we're using things like Garruk's Uprising to draw cards right when our dragons come in and giving them trample. And then we're playing a pair of red enchantments that can be kind of fun depending on what comes in Flameshadow Conjuring and Molten Echoes. Both of these care about when a non-token creature enters. For Conjuring, we can pay a red. If we do, we make a copy of that creature that has haste until end of turn, and then goes away at the end of turn. For Molten Echoes, we choose a type. Just any creature of that type comes in, it gets a token copy and gets haste, and then exile at the beginning of the next end step. So here's a pair of enchantments going to take every dragon come in and give us a chance to have a copy. Now, the only downside of these two, right, is when we're playing legendary dragons, obviously we can't have two copies of that same legend out at the same time. But both are really nice for Ureni, because even if a copy of Ureni comes in and dies immediately to legendary roll, you're still going to get that ETB trigger on the stack, meaning you could still cheat in a dragon and just keep going with big value. We've got lots of potential ways to give our dragons haste. Temur Ascendancy is a really classic enchantment in these three colors, just flat out giving all of our creatures haste and then drawing us some cards when they come in. Rhythm of the Wild stops our creatures from being countered and gives all of our non-token creatures a choice of a counter or haste when they come in. A really nice ability depending on when they come in, right? If they come in our main phase, obviously we might want haste to go to attack. But if they come in off like Ureni's ability off attack, maybe they want to come in with a counter. Or if we have another haste enabler, say something like Temur Ascendancy or the Frostcliff Siege over there on the left out at the same time as Rhythm, well then Rhythm can just give them a counter, and then they're already going to have haste, and you're getting best of both worlds. For Frostcliff Siege, we're going to choose the bottom one, giving all of our creatures trample and haste and +1/+0, just making sure that all of our dragons can hit the turn they come in. Well, I've said it before on the show, and I'll say it again. No deck's ever complete. This is my version 1.0 shot at Ureni. And I'll be 100% honest, I think a lot of the value from Ureni, if you want to go up the power scale and up the money scale, comes for some of our more expensive dragons and pieces. The new Mox Jasper might be a trap to some people. I think it's a very good mana rock, especially in decks that already are going to have dragons. Not having to pay for it seems really good, and you can just get it down in an early turn if you see it and be able to use it later. But truthfully, I think a lot of where my next probably $100 of this deck would come to just adding certain dragons. Gnawbone itself is $50, but has a great ability. Whenever a creature we control hits a player, make that many treasures, just funding ourselves to do so many great things with mana. Same thing with Clouth, can just net us a ton of mana on attack. I think since I chose to go the Blink route, you could also go the extra combats route, and some of the extra combat spells are not mega expensive, but they are decently expensive. And you could also go that route, getting your dragons in multiple times in a turn, just really hurting your opponents. Truthfully, there's a lot of ways you can look at this. I think the dragons are good enough to end the game on their own as long as they're given the chance. We just need to get there, and I just chose Blink to do that, and I could definitely understand if you wanted to choose a different route to do it. But let's get into our playtest. Remember, the goal of the playtest on the channel is not to find magical Christmas land. It's not to show off our best plays, but it's to understand how do we set up our game, how do we get to our commander, and how do we, make our board state look good. Here we're keeping a 4-lander with that Breaching Dragonstorm Jade Orb, one of the multiple orbs of Dragonkind that came out in Baldur's Gate. Each of the 3 in Temur colors tap for any of them, and then give the bonus ability to that dragon when you use it to cast a dragon. For Jade Orb, it gives that dragon an additional counter and hexproof till a turn, and then we have an Essence Flux there for Ureni. So I think we're just going to kind of work our way up towards the... we just want to work our way up towards the orb right now. Again, not really seeing anything too crazy here. Turn 1, 2, or 3 to do. There we see the Conjurer's Closet. We see Frontier Siege, a very interesting ability. When it comes in, we can choose one. We can either get 2 green mana at every one of our main phases, or we can have our creatures with flying fight when they come in. Both are very good abilities depending on what you need. I think here, I was going to say, unless we see something radically different, I think the answer is getting that double green, because then that would make sure that we get... that would make sure that we can get Ureni down here this next turn. 4, 5, 6, 7. So we get Ureni down. It comes in with an additional counter and hexproof this turn. And then we just go ahead and resolve Ureni's ability, right? So we get to look at the top 8 and put a dragon from among them onto the battlefield. We should have enough dragons in the deck that we should make sure we hit one no matter what, but it just comes down to which one do we hit. And we see Lathless, a great dragon. Again, going to make us those tokens whenever dragons come in. And again, not a bad attacker for us on future turns. Neither of them can attack this turn, but that's A-okay. We don't mind setting up, especially on turn 5, right? Because now on turn 6, we've got 6, 8 mana, 10 if we wait till the second main phase, but I think here we want to be spending our mana. I like the idea of the Gargantuan, going to start growing our board at the start of our turns. Hammerhead Tyrant can start bouncing things whenever we cast spells. We could look to do something like Farseek if we want this turn. We would still have 3, 4, 5, 6 mana. We could still like Dragon Storm and do the Farseek, or we could get something like the Closet. We could still get the Closet down as well to guarantee that blink of Ureni at the end step. Although remember, if we blinked Ureni right now, we would lose that counter from Jade Orb, but it only got the hexproof till this turn, so it's no longer, hexproof. I think I would just go digging off of the I think I'd go digging off the Farseek just to get into the land. I mean, we might as well. There's no reason not to. Now staring at, what, 7 mana? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I mean, there's the Gargantuan, there's the Tyrant, or there's the Dragonstorm. The Dragonstorm's going to hit us. The first thing we hit that's mana by 8 or less, these two are the known quantities, right? So the question is, what makes the most sense? I mean, I like the idea of bouncing Ureni at the end step. That's going to get us a trigger on attack and a trigger on end step. I feel like that could make some sense. And then that should allow us to see what we can get on the end step as well. So we go to attack, right? Ureni's going to go off on attack, and we see Scourge of Valkus is already a great start, right? Getting some damage in. Ooh, Atarka is huge. The only thing I remember about Atarka, though, is we've already declared the attack with Ureni, so we're not going to get double strike. Terror could make sense. Valkus could make sense. Terror arguably is going to probably deal more damage in the short term. Valkus is probably going to start dealing a whole lot more damage in the long term, right? Once we start getting, right? Because think about Valkus. As soon as Valkus comes in, we get this 5/5, which will also deal damage with Valkus, right? So I think that's my choice. I mean, Atarka could make a lot of sense, especially, I guess, for next turn, right? So I think it comes down to what do we think we see on the board. If we look fairly open, maybe we go for Atarka for next turn, right? But if we think we're worried, I would go for Valkus. That is going to make us that 5/5 dragon when it comes in off of Lathless. Take our attacks. Then on end step, I would blink Ureni with the Closet. Again, it won't get its counter that it got from the Jade Orb, but that's okay. But we're going to go ahead and look again. And again, just getting this multiple times per turn, I feel like is really good. I mean, Twin Flame feels pretty obvious to match with that double strike. Just making sure that our dragons hit just super hard, and another 5/5, 2 more 5/5s, one when Ureni comes in, and then one when Twin Flame comes in. And now we untap here, right, with just a ton of big dragons, double strike. They don't have trample, but I still think it's a-okay because double strike's going to do enough, especially on these tramplers that already have it. But again, if we have opponents who just don't have flyers, this is just going to get brutal. And remember, we have all the mana in the world to dump into Lathless if we wanted to. Otherwise, we just maybe go for the breach, just see what you could get before combat, and then just, work your way in for big damage. And I think that's a pretty decent place to stop there. Let's get in playtest number 2. Even a 4-lander with that Thundermane to look at the top. Deceptive Frostkite can come in as a copy of any creature with power 4 or greater, except it's a dragon. You can use it to get another cheap copy of Ureni, but remember, it doesn't change its name, so it would have to, right, die to a legendary rule, and then Reality Shift for some removal. Well, there we see Displace, not a bad way, again, to bounce a couple dragons. Here, I think we'll just get the mountain down, and we can hold up the Reality Shift in case somebody does something a little early. Here with 3 mana, I don't think we really have anything, so I think we just scaled Nurture, right? Get the extra mana every turn. We get to Scry 1. We see a Rampant Growth. Next turn, we have 5 mana. Right, when we play the Dream Root Cascade. And I think Thundermane could make sense. We also could go Twin Flame, right? So there's a couple options next turn with 5 mana. I don't mind the Rampant Growth. We probably could get ourselves into some nice ramp either way with it. But if I ramp, I only have 3 mana. And I don't think there's anything I really want to do for 3 mana. So I think I'll just play the Thundermane. Let's look and see what's on top. Gainax is on top. A nice thing to have on top. Unfortunately, this means we're not going to hit Ureni next turn, which is a reality we had to accept, but I think we were still fine to accept. Here we see a land on top. So By Rampant Growth, I have 3 mana left over. We could still leave up some removal, maybe. But I think we have to kind of focus ourselves in towards getting towards it. We see Utvara on top. We're still 1 mana off of... Ureni, and we can get there with Gainax when it comes in. So the next turn, I would say just play Gainax, get the treasure, we get to scry 1 with that. We'll put this guy on... Well, we kind of need the land, right? At some point. Now we have Ureni next turn. Got 2 mana here. I mean, we could Frostkite something if we want to, but I don't see it. I think we just wait till next turn, tear the peaks on top, and I think we just Ureni here now with that big amounts of mana. We get to scry 1 again. We'll keep the terror on top. At least we know that's one thing that could come in. Ooh, Miram's huge. Tear the Peaks makes sense. Miram makes sense, giving us copies of these dragons too. I think I kind of like Miram just to now give us copies of those dragons. Ureni coming in makes us a treasure. Miram coming in makes us a treasure. And now we paid all 7 mana to do that. We got 2 left. We could Frostkite a dragon. I can't Frostkite Gainax, right? Because it's not 4 or greater. But we have a really fun ability here to Frostkite Ureni for these 2 treasures and get a non-legendary copy of Ureni at the same time. So we would effectively get 2 more Ureni triggers here, which could be absolutely brutal depending on what we hit. So let's start digging. For the first one, remember, Miram's just going to copy any dragon that comes in. All we hit is Goldlust Triad, which is not that big of a deal. Can start getting us nice amounts of treasures on future turns. And now we'll do the second Ureni. Again, we were really hoping for some way to give out haste or something like that, but that's a-okay. There's the Roaring River region. For some reason, it's not loading its picture. That wouldn't be bad, being able to bounce things. Maybe we bounce our opponent's key things here and get some back. Earthquake Dragon is just a big threat in the future, being a big dragon. But let's get hand out tokens. So this Frostkite's going to die, right? Because it comes in as a copy of Ureni. I guess I'll take Lathless. I'm not really entirely sure what to do on that choice. I think all 2 of our options there, 3 options are pretty good. We get a copy of Lathless that's non-legendary. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 treasures we get off of Gainax, right? Because that's coming in. My thought honestly for the Meringue was to bounce Gainax to get a copy of it with Miram. Right, that's definitely a facility that we could do. None of these guys can attack this turn, right? So we're pretty much just set on that. I'd leave up the Displace just to, protect some things if we need to. And then just look to put something like Twin Flame down next turn. And just, if we survive, the game's just over, right? This Ureni dies due to legendary rule, and we're just in great shape, right? There's pretty much nothing I can think of other than a board wipe here that would ruin our fun. Even if somebody removes Ureni, we're still in a great spot. If they remove Miram, we really don't care. We're still in a great spot. And if they remove Ureni, we've still got another one, and we could even blink it in response to get it back in and get another trigger. But let's get into playtest number 3. Keeping a 4-lander with the Orb, the Ghostly Flicker, and Tyrant. So we've got a good way to get started, and we top deck Up the Beanstalk, a great enchantment. It says whenever it comes in or whenever we cast a creature spell, or any spell with mana value 5 or greater, we draw a card. So we did get it to draw some cards there. We see another blinker in Blur. Not bad, right, to get another blinker for us. Now we put down the Orb. We're at 5 mana. If I go for the Horde, it leaves me with 3 mana. Or I put down the Siege, it'd guarantee the Horde. Well, so the Horde doesn't guarantee me Ureni next turn, but the Siege does. So I think it makes more sense to do the Siege and guarantee me enough mana right this turn to play Ureni. We would use the orb obviously to give it the counter and hexproof until our next turn. That would draw a card off the beanstalk because it's on cast. I can't avoid that draw, unfortunately, because Miram would have been ideal, right? But I can't avoid that because it's on cast. So it's obviously Twin Flame Tyrant here. Yeah, Miram would have been great, but that's okay. I mean, we can't avoid it. It's on cast. So, but that's all right. Now, no haste, but again, set up for next turn. I think actually, so the Frontier Siege gives us 2 green at the second main. If we had gone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, we would have 3 left to play this Dragon Sword, just to get us an extra mana for next turn, which you never know, could be relevant. It says each of your main phases, so we would potentially be able to get up to 4 green per turn. But now we come back to our turn again. Ureni will be able to attack this turn. We also probably could have left the mana where we could have blinked Ureni as well that turn if we wanted to. So there was multiple options there on what to do. Here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 on the first main phase. I mean, there's a world where we go Miram and blink Ureni to get a copy of it when it comes back in to get 2 of them. The only thing is it wouldn't attack this turn. So the question is, do you try to get the dragons before they attack? Do you try to get the dragons before they attack to try to get some extra stats on the board, or do we just blink Ureni and give up? Do we attack with it and blink it after we attack, just so that we still get more value that way? That's what makes sense to me, because then you can still attack, get Ureni's trigger this turn, and then still blink it to get another one. Because it kind of makes no reason not for it to attack. So on attack, there's the river region. Again, for some reason, that picture not loading. Oh, Frostkite would be a ton of fun coming in as a copy of Ureni, right? We would get a legendary copy and an unlegendary copy of Ureni. Ooh, that would be a ton of fun. So what happens here is this comes as in a copy of the real one, which would make a token copy of Ureni. Now we got 2 more Ureni triggers to go off. Again, just cheating in more dragons. Oh, Stormtail would be so much fun if we could cast it this turn. The buff could be good. It comes in and gets a copy with it comes in and gets a copy with Miram, and then we got 1 more trigger, right? Just trying to think if there's any dragons that would affect this combat. There's Goldspan. We get a copy of Goldspan. But again, not in bad shape. And then we could immediately blink Ureni after our combat for, again, another token copy of Ureni. So this Hellkite's going to immediately die, right, because of the legend rule. But again, now either second main, when we get that extra 2 mana, I'm thinking just blur Ureni, come in, get a copy of it with Miram. Now you have 2 of those triggers going off. And now we're just in the points, right? On all the value we have going on at this point. They're getting copy with Miram as they come in. And I think we're just in great shape unless somebody has a board wipe. I think that's really what dragons come down to, especially at stuff like bracket level 3. Is just your opponents have the wipes to deal with them. Otherwise, you can just take over a board state. But let's get into our final playtest, keeping a 3-lander with Arcane Signet, Dragon Tempest, Temur, Ascendancy, and Selvala. We pretty much have all of the, and we draw a Flame Shadow. We pretty much have all of the support things we could ask for here. Getting the Arcane Signet down. I think we need to try to get Selvala down. Just so we can potentially get some mana in here. Ooh, we didn't hit a land. That's not ideal. So just 5 mana. We have 5 mana, though, because we can put this into Selvala for 2. Temur, Ascendancy plus Dragon Tempest. It feels awkward, but I feel like you got to take the turns to do those. Of course, then we see Frostcliff. You got to take the turn to do those key things when you can, because I feel like it could be big. Because now we could go Goldspan into 2 here, 3, 4, 5 for Goldspan. We get a draw, and it gets haste, right? Because of Dragon Tempest, it makes a treasure when it attacks, remember? And those treasures tap for 2 mana. Goldspan would, I guess, could potentially have drawn us a card off Selvala if it was the highest power, but we have no way to, right, simulate that for sure. But now 3, 4, 5, 6, and then, now this is 4, so 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 mana. So now we've got plenty of mana for Ureni on this turn. We have the haste, so Ureni's going to come in and attack, and the dragon that can come in. So I think we pay the 7, 4 into here, 5, 6, 7, and play Ureni, right? Ureni draws us. We would have its choice, and the Team Ascendancy trigger when it comes in. I'll draw off the Ascendancy. Again, I may end up regretting it, but we get our choice, and we'll go digging. A lot of our blink spells right there. And we see there so now the Meringue wants to load. Interesting. So we get Meringue coming in. Again, drawing us a card off of Team Ascendancy. We have the Tempest trigger. And we could bounce, but I don't think we need to. I think one of the Urenis probably are highest for Selvala, so we'll draw. But now both these have haste, right? Because of Team Ascendancy and Dragon Tempest, they also both doled out some damage. So now they can go ahead and attack. Goldspan will make another treasure when it attacks, right? And then we'll go dig again for Ureni. I'd probably just bounce my opponent's things with Meringue. Stormcale Scion could be fun. I think it's just probably the Gargantuan. Again, more damage with Dragon Tempest when it comes in. Another card draw off of Team Ascendancy. And then, now deal those damages. We got 4 mana left off of our treasures. Just trying to think, do we try to preserve it to hold up like Smuggler's Surprise just to protect our board, right? We pitch Cultivate, the Bond, the Siege, that, and I would just hold up Smuggler's Surprise. I mean, we could do one of them for a Farseek just to not absolutely continue to just punish ourselves on lands, right? Even though we're going to have these treasures now from Goldspan. My thought here is hold up the Smuggler's Surprise just to protect pretty much our entirety of our board. We untap, get all the counters on them with the Gargantuan, and I think just something like Twin Flame Tyrant plus attack is going to be enough. 5, 6, 7, 8 mana. I'm 1 mana off of... Well, no, I have it here, right? So I have 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. My thought was like Flame Shadow plus Twin Flame Tyrant plus the red mana to make a copy of it. Now you're quadrupling your damage this turn, and then just get in for big damage to finalize it out. Again, Dragon's very good at closing the game when you get there. It's just about getting there. Why is this deck 101 cards? I will fix that. I'm not entirely sure why. I'll fix that and figure out why that is the case. Let me know what you think of Ureni down in the comment section below, and I will catch you on the